welcome you to this deep dive. And a special welcome to everyone joining us today on the Curious Mind YouTube channel.
Great to be here.
Today, we're jumping straight into something that feels almost futuristic, but it's happening right now. It's where artificial intelligence meets national security.
Yeah, think high-stakes cyber conflicts, AI guiding military decisions, basically technology shaping global power in ways we're only starting to grasp, especially relevant for us here in the U.S.
Definitely. And the sources we're digging into today, wow. We've got articles, some really candid insider chat from Silicon Valley, even a peek at potential government AI policies that, well, they could change everything.
Absolutely. Our goal today is to, cut through the hype and the jargon, pull out what really matters, and figure out what this means for you, for the U.S., and for our collective future.
So prepare for some, let's say, potentially controversial ideas, a look behind the tech curtain, and a debate that's heating up in Washington. It can really reshape things. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So first things first, there's this real sense of urgency, right? The U.S. seems to be racing to get AI integrated into its national security strategy.
Oh, absolutely. The tension with China, it's not just political talk anymore. It's deeply technological. And AI is, well, it's fast becoming the main arena for that competition.
Yeah, I saw one report calling AI basically the key to keeping America's military and tech advantage.
Exactly. And it's not some far-off thing. The head of the Defense Innovation Unit, the DIU, he's already flagging immediate threats. Think cyber warfare, electronic warfare, even just the constant flood of misinformation.
These are happening now.
Right now. And the message is clear.
No.
We need to focus resources on these areas, and fast.
Okay, so the DIU, this sounds interesting. Is this like the DoD trying to be more nimble, more Silicon Valley-like?
That's pretty much the idea, yeah. It's set up to be this agile group within the DoD, specifically looking for promising commercial tech stuff already out there and figuring out how the military can use it.
So funding startups, speeding up contracts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Cutting through the usual red tape. They're trying to inject that Silicon Valley speed into a system that historically moves, well, let's just say, not so quickly. We're seeing them work with companies doing drone tech, advanced security, enterprise AI, even things like wearable health monitors for soldiers.
Fascinating mix.
Right.
So does this mean the old way, huge contracts with the big defense giants, is maybe not working for AI?
That's a huge question right now. I mean, the traditional model with companies like Northrop Grumman or Raytheon, it's built for these massive long-term projects.
Right.
But AI, it changes in months, sometimes weeks. It doesn't wait years. Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, talked about this. He said, there's this symbiosis with the big players, sure, but the military has to tap into Silicon Valley's faster cycles for things like AI, autonomy, cybersecurity.
The speed mismatch.
Totally. It's a race, really. And you see companies like Anduril with Brian Schimpf.
Yeah.
They seem to be proving you can bring that tech speed to defense. They landed big drone defense contracts pretty quickly.
Yeah, that caught my eye. It shows it's possible.
It does. And it's not just about new startups. Amy Ziegart's work, reviewed recently, highlights how the whole U.S. intelligence community is grappling with this tech shift.
So it's bigger than just the military hardware side.
Oh, yeah. The need for public-private partnerships is becoming central. Ziegart argues, look, secrets still matter, obviously, but the real advantage is going to come from being able to process and understand huge amounts of data fast.
Making sense of the noise.
Precisely. Our intel agencies need the tools, the algorithms, the expertise that often lives in the private sector now. And you see this reflected in updated national security strategies. They explicitly call out these partnerships.
Okay, so the government is clearly trying hard to adapt to bring in this tech to protect U.S. interests. But then that leads straight to the next big issue.
Yeah.
Control. How much should the government actually try to manage this stuff?
And that's where the friction really starts. It's a massive debate with huge implications for us as U.S. citizens. We looked at one view from a former tech CTO, now an AI investor, and he was really worried about overregulation. He pointed to Europe, saying too many rules could just stifle the benefits AI offers.
The argument being, let it run free, basically.
Pretty much. Let it innovate, let it help society, don't hold it back. His reaction to a question about democratic oversight was memorable.
Yeah, I saw that quote contrasting the U.S. Constitution with everybody being equal and holding people back, saying, we're not in Sweden.
Right. It really captures that tension, doesn't it? A very strong, almost libertarian view, prioritizing innovation above almost everything else. Very Silicon Valley in some ways.
Definitely a certain perspective. But then there's this other idea floating around from the Effective Altruism Forum, soft nationalization. What's that about? It sounds different.
It is different. It suggests that instead of, the government actually taking over AI labs like old school nationalization,
Owning them outright.
they'll likely use a bunch of policy tools to exert increasing control over the big AI players, the frontier labs. Think of it as influence and direction, not direct ownership.
Like pulling strings from behind the scenes. What kind of strings are we talking about?
Well, the list they outline is pretty broad. It starts with things like mandatory reporting, telling the government about big projects, or needing pre-approval for really large AI training runs.
Okay, that seems somewhat manageable.
But it could go further. Things like licensing requirements to even develop an AI, rules about who you can sell it to, limits on what the AI can actually do, and even potentially the government getting involved in research direction, IP, maybe even classifying some AI research.
Wow. So the government could essentially steer AI development without actually owning the steering wheel.
That's the core idea of soft nationalization, as they frame it. The stated goal is national security, keeping the U.S. ahead, especially versus China, but doing it without totally killing private sector innovation. It's presented as a balancing act.
But I can already hear the alarm bells ringing for a lot of people listening. What about the impact on society, the economy, jobs, and just concentrating that much power?
Exactly. Those are the huge flashing warning signs. And the forum acknowledges these questions. They also make a key point. The U.S. probably won't slow down its own AI development unless there's some kind of international deal, one that includes rivals like China.
Because if we pause and they don't.
We risk falling behind strategically. That's the fear.
Okay, so this really sets up a fundamental clash, doesn't it? Security versus openness, control versus innovation. And speaking of that Silicon Valley viewpoint, Mark Andreessen's conversation we looked at provides a really sharp contrast.
Oh, absolutely. Andreessen is very bullish on AI. He tends to downplay the existential risks people talk about.
The AI will kill us all scenarios.
Right. He focuses much more on the positive potential, helping people learn, boosting productivity, making life better. He almost sees the deep fear around AI as like a modern kind of religious panic.
He compared it to anxieties about industrialization, didn't he? Like the fear of machines taking all the jobs back then.
He did. He points out that we've often reacted with fear to big technological shifts that ultimately proved beneficial. While, any tech can be misused, he argues the net effect of progress is overwhelmingly positive. And he predicts AI will become the control layer for pretty much all technology.
That's a massive statement, the control layer for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also worries about who controls that control layer.
Yes, that's the flip side of his optimism. He's deeply concerned about governments, or maybe just a few giant companies, getting a stranglehold on AI and using it to shape how people think, what information they see.
Like a super powerful centralized media or bank.
That's the analogy he uses. And his answer, his countermeasure, open source AI?
Making the code, the models, available to everyone.
Exactly. Transparent, accessible, not controlled by any single entity. But here's where he drops something pretty alarming. He claims there are senior officials in Washington actively trying to outlaw open source AI.
Outlaw it, like make it illegal.
Even suggesting jail time for developers working on it. That's what he stated.
Wow. Okay, that's a potential major conflict brewing. Outlawing open source seems fundamentally counter to how a lot of U.S. tech innovation has happened.
It really does. It pits that open, collaborative tech culture directly against government desires for control over what they see as powerful, potentially dangerous tech. And this fear connects to that proposed AI policy discussed on that YouTube channel we reviewed.
Right, the one they called potentially authoritarian.
Yeah.
Suggesting it could really slam the door on open development. What was in that proposal that got people so worked up?
Several things. First, a really broad definition of major security risk from AI. It wasn't just existential stuff. It included risks to infrastructure, national security, public safety, AI systems that could self-replicate or escape control.
That sounds like it could cover a lot of ground in AI research.
A huge amount.
Yeah.
Then there was a mandatory permit process for any AI deemed a major security risk, plus tough standards for anything labeled extremely high concern AI.
And the timeline for getting these permits.
90 days for review. In the AI world, it's seen as incredibly slow, could really stifle development cycles.
3 months is an age in AI time. What else?
There were whistleblower protections. Now, on the surface, that sounds good, right? Protecting people who report dangerous AI work.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
But the proposal apparently protected whistleblowers even if they were wrong, as long as they acted in good faith. Some worry this could create a really paranoid atmosphere in labs, people afraid to push boundaries for fear of being reported, even mistakenly.
The chilling effect.
Potentially, yeah. And then there was the requirement for developers of this extremely high concern AI to conclusively prove it couldn't cause a catastrophe.
Conclusively, that sounds impossible.
Yeah.
How do you prove a negative like that with absolute certainty in research?
Exactly. It sets an incredibly high bar. The proposal also mentioned stopping AI training early if it got too smart too fast, and even tracking AI hardware. It suggests a potentially very deep level of government oversight.
So we've got this push for government control, driven by real security worries, potentially leading to heavy regulation, maybe even squashing open source.
While on the other side, you have powerful voices, especially from Silicon Valley, warning about killing innovation and the dangers of centralized AI power.
It feels like a fundamental battle for the soul of AI development in the U.S.
Andreessen actually frames it even bigger. He calls it a new Cold War over AI.
Not just U.S. versus China, but competing visions for AI.
Exactly. He sees the U.S. and China as the two AI superpowers, each pushing its own ideology through its technology globally.
And his take on China's vision.
He suggests Chinese AI will likely embed Xi Jinping's ideology, communism, Chinese supremacy, things that Chinese government is pretty open about wanting to promote.
Whereas the American vision is, well, more debated, less unified.
That seems to be the case. There's internal conflict, different philosophies battling it out. Both countries see AI as vital. The U.S. military talks about it as a third offset, technology that makes older military stuff obsolete. But the U.S. approach isn't monolithic like China's might be.
That lack of unity could be a weakness in a race, couldn't it?
It could be. He draws parallels to the nuclear race, the espionage like the Rosenberg's case, to really emphasize the high stakes here.
Who gets the most advanced AI first, especially things like automated weapons? That's a terrifying question.
It is. And beyond the weapons, there's the whole challenge of AI alignment. How do you make sure AI acts in line with human values when human values themselves differ so much around the world, let alone between the U.S. and China?
So you've just journeyed with us through this incredibly complex intersection of AI and national security, a landscape filled with urgency, debate, clashing visions.
We've seen the U.S. government rushing to harness AI for defense, the fierce arguments about how much control is too much, the starkly different views coming out of Silicon Valley, and this looming global competition that has serious ideological underpinnings for America.
And here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
The future path for AI in the U.S. feels like it's truly at a crossroads.
Yeah, you got this intense push-pull between national security needs, the drive for innovation that's always been a U.S. strength, and our fundamental values around openness and freedom.
The whole soft nationalization idea versus the push for open source AI, the tension isn't going away.
Not at all. And how we define AI risk, how we manage it. These are going to be defining questions for the U.S. in the coming years. The answers will affect everyone.
Which brings up a really important question for you listening right now. As AI gets deeper into our lives, into our defenses, what should the government's role be? How do we navigate this?
How do we ensure this incredibly powerful technology actually serves American interests, all American interests, and reflects our values? It's something we all need to be thinking about.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
If you found this exploration valuable or just plain interesting, please do hit that like button, subscribe to the Curious Mind channel if you haven't already, and maybe share this video with someone else who's curious about where all this is heading.
We appreciate you being part of the community.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the ideas shaping our world. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning. Thank you, everyone.